It brings empowerment to parents, to youth, and communities.
There's a lot of tools that are introduced in the series, a lot of practical examples, and it really helps me understand, as a parent and as an administrator, ways to more effectively solve some of these problems and address these issues that are complex.
I feel that education is power, and that as we educate ourselves on maybe some of the issues that our society is facing, that we will raise better children, be better families, have better communities.
It's a great opportunity to learn valuable tools to communicate with the youth, to bridge the gap between what we think is going on and what maybe the empirical science and data shows us can help these youth.
I really think it will change lives, change families, and change communities.
Hello, and welcome to the third webinar in our 2024 Stand and Raise Parent Empowerment Speaker Series, with different subject matter experts featured each Tuesday this month. If you missed last week's inspiring webinar with Deanna Lamson from White Ribbon Week and Power Up for Families, you should have received an email with a link to the recording. And if you did not receive it, please reach out on our website, projectstand.org, and we can make sure you get that. This webinar is hosted by Project Stand, where our mission is to prevent exploitation by empowering youth, parents, and school communities to stand and thrive by using technology in healthy ways. My name is Brittany Homer. I'm co-founder and executive director of Project Stand and mom of 4 kids who inspire me to be involved in providing resources like this. So we invite you to follow us on Facebook and Instagram at projectstand.mediasafety, where you can stay updated on the latest resources we have for students, parents, and advocates. You can also go to our website and subscribe to receive media safety tips and other updates, including what is happening with legislation relating to keeping kids safe online. So the last couple of weeks, I've shared exciting news about a groundbreaking, comprehensive, evidence-based set of media safety education programs. They've been designed collaboratively for kindergarten through 12th grade students and their parents. And this is called Safe Tech Solutions. So Project Stand is thrilled to be joining forces with 3 other nonprofits, White Ribbon Week, Fight the New Drug, and Raise, to provide this empowering programming. If you are interested in learning more about it or in bringing safe tech solutions to your school district, reach out on our website, projectstand.org or safetechsolutions.org. We would love to hear from you. So today, the Q&A is open for your questions and comments, which you can submit anonymously if you wish. And at the end of the presentation, I will pull questions for Dawn from the Q&A. So before I introduce today's presenter, I just want to let you know that today's presentation is intended for adults. So I'm so thrilled to introduce you to an amazing force to be reckoned with, Dawn Hawkins. She is the CEO of the National Center on Sexual Exploitation, the leading organization exposing the connection between all forms of sexual exploitation, including sex trafficking, prostitution, pornography, and child sexual abuse. Dawn's energy, creativity, and mobilization skills are deployed to build a world free from sexual violence with freedom and human dignity for all. Dawn is deeply committed to bipartisan public policy solutions at the federal and state level, and her issue expertise, visionary initiatives, and innovative strategy have led to groundbreaking change in the legislative arena and in multi-million-dollar corporate policies. She has also envisioned and created a law center to challenge sexual exploitation profiteers in the courts. Dawn has centered the need to address sex buyer demand for commercial sex, has severely weakened the mainstream pornography industry, and is leading efforts to bring more accountability to technology platforms for child safety. She has fostered a broad international coalition of 600 plus organizations and constantly advocates for survivors. Her work has sparked change at Google, Hilton Worldwide, Comcast, Walmart, the Department of Defense, Instagram, TikTok, and other influential firms. She regularly volunteers for organizations devoted to helping children and refugees. She is a graduate of Tufts University and currently resides with her husband and 5 children in Virginia. And I just have to say that the first time I heard Dawn present was 6 years ago, and I will never forget the fire that she lit under me. She had spent some time talking about corporate policies like the ones I mentioned that she had worked on changing. And she shared some specific changes that Google had made in response to her advocacy. And then she said, if we can change Google, we can do anything, right? And those words have stuck with me and led to much of the work that I do to protect children and strengthen families. So today, Dawn is specifically going to talk about technology's impact on rising rates of problematic sexual behavior among children. So Dawn, thank you so much for being here, and we'll turn the time over to you.
Thank you, Brittany. I'm so grateful to be in this fight with you and advocating right alongside you, and grateful to be with the rest of you. I wish we could be face to face and I really could get at some of the topics that you're wrestling with. I have so much to share with you, but I also want to give you what you want. So I'm also like peeking at the Q&A. So if there's a specific topic, please drop that in and I will work that into my remarks as well. And we'll have a much more intentional Q&A at the end. But I'm going to go on and off of sharing my screen because I feel like it's weird to watch a webinar where the person speaking is so little and I have so much to share with you. So on and off sharing my screen with you. A little bit about the National Center on Sexual Exploitation. We are focused really on trying to help connect the dots between all these forms of sexual abuse and exploitation. We believe that in order to solve any one of these, we have to talk about how they often are connected, they fuel one another, they cause each other possibly, and we need solutions that address those. So just a couple of examples, like sex trafficking and prostitution. There is no sex trafficking without the demand for prostitution. If people didn't want to purchase another human for sex in the prostitution marketplace, sex trafficking would not exist. You can't really separate those two. A huge one, I would argue too, is pornography and violence against women. If we want to solve violence against women, we have to address also that our young people, especially, are watching hardcore, very violent sexualized content from young ages on, and it's feeding the way that they view the opposite sex, view themselves, sexuality and intimacy and all those things. So how do we expect to end violence against women if we ignore the role pornography is playing? Those are just some of the examples. Today I'm going to be really focused much more on technology and particularly pornography. I'll spend more time on pornography and its connection to child sexual abuse, but in particular child on child harmful sexual behaviors. So I hope this helps you understand a little bit about us. I am much more in the policy and advocacy side. We're advocating for laws to be passed and corporations to change. And when those corporations don't change, we have started filing civil lawsuits against them in the last couple of years. We're very excited because mostly we're winning in the courts and they're being held accountable for the flawed platforms that they've created that has enabled so much harm. If you want, I could talk much more about that advocacy later. I am going to beg you all to join me in the advocacy and reaching out to your legislators and calling out some of these companies. But more so, I'm going to have this is going to be a heavy conversation, friends, about the role of child on child harmful sexual behavior. This stuff is heavy. I want to share that in just this is quite old. It's hard to get like really accurate newer numbers. I believe the numbers have massively skyrocketed since COVID, and our young people were all at home and also have so much more access to online platforms where there's predators and harmful content that they're exposed to. But just to help you understand the gravity and the extent of child on child harmful sexual behavior, here's a case from the UK that in just 4 years, allegations of children committing sexual offenses against other children rose 78%. There were 2,000 cases in 5 months, and they thought, this is in Missouri. And when they passed a law to try to track this, they estimated that there'd be about 600 cases in a year. The Department of Justice regularly posts reports on how many arrests they've made for child sexual abuse. And approximately 33%, like it's a firm number going back a number of years, but approximately 33% of those that they have arrested for child sexual abuse are other children. And we know that that number has to be low because a lot of us are not reporting child on child harmful sexual behavior for lots of reasons, which I can get into here too. But that we just know that this is a crisis. This is happening to great degrees. You know, I think many of you have probably experienced this in your own families, your own homes, neighbors, people that you're close to have experienced this. And it's important to understand there's like normal sexual behavior that our young kids are engaging in that's age appropriate. It might feel alarming to us. But I'm not talking about that, you know, show me yours and I'll show you mine kind of behavior. We're talking about more harmful, more egregious cases. 2009, an estimated 50% of child sexual abuse is perpetrated by other children or young people. I really think this is much higher now because all of our kids have access to these devices and content that's really problematic. Here's a story that we received. I don't know how old my brother was when our cousin started molesting him. He must have been very young, around 5 years old. The boys were 7 or 8 and 5 or 6. So he started his addiction to pornography when he was 10 years old. And he began sexually groping me and abusing me at night. This was my brother, who was only a few years older than me, and I was an innocent age of only 4 years old. The truth is that many of our young people, they often act out what their experiences are, whether they've been abused themselves or whether they've witnessed sexual behaviors through things like pornography. They're simply acting out what has happened. That's almost ubiquitous. It's not always that those causing harm have been harmed physically by someone else, but almost always pornography was part of their experience as a young person. And I would argue that just like kids want to do all the time, they're acting out what they see adults doing, what they think is normal behavior. I'm going to take a minute to talk a little bit about pornography and public health harms, just to make sure you have a strong like kind of base in your understanding. I'm going to go through some research and then I'm going to move over to talking about youth with problematic or harmful sexual behavior and pornography. And then I'm going to talk about some proposed solutions. I want to also talk about other technology issues, but I don't know if we'll have a chance to get to that as much today. So let's see how far we get. Let's see. So a massive change in pornography is just there's been a revolution in accessibility. Nearly all of our teenagers have been exposed to pornography, and there are so many studies that indicate it's really just near 100% totality that our young people have been exposed. Really, we believe that, and a number of studies are pointing towards average exposure being 9, 8, 7 years old when it comes to hardcore violent pornography. That's just a huge, massive change from what it used to be. The issue is that the pornography today is much different. The themes, like understanding the common themes and just mainstream pornography. It's often teen themed or child themed, incest, rape, racism, violence, slavery, and sexual torture. These are like the most common themes if you just look at like the top selling pornography or the top searches right now that are happening. This is not, I mean, imagine if you're a young child and this is your first experience with sexuality and intimacy. You're seeing these kinds of themes. And I'm going to point out too, like in the heteropornography script. So here's an analysis of content of 172 videos from a popular pornography website. And they were trying to understand the influence of age in the performers. So if it was like a performer who was made to look or is called a teen versus an adult performer. It's very interesting to see, and it's so deeply troubling that 90% of the teenage females who were depicted in pornography contained visible aggression against them, and then they displayed intense pleasure at that aggression. So imagine what that's teaching our young people when they're seeing violence perpetrated against other young people, but then it's pleasure that's their response. So how is that going to impact their development and the way they view themselves and others? So another point here, the researchers in that particular study are noting that these trends are may signal to viewers of all ages that these acts are not only normative and legitimate, but perhaps are even expected. And it creates social pressure on both young women and young men to reenact them with their sexual partners. I'm trying to help you understand, like there's a number of studies here that show when people view pornography, they sometimes seek to act out what they're viewing. With young people who don't have fully developed brains, who haven't had healthy exposure to intimacy, this harmful, violent, degrading way is often what they're going to reenact. There are about 50 studies now, even because a few more came out in the last year and a half, that show neurological studies assessing the brain structure and functioning of internet porn users and sex or porn addicts is consistent with like over 300 studies about internet addiction in the brain. And there's like this argument about whether pornography is addictive. I'm coming to you all to say, while it's a debate in like the therapy counseling circles, it is not a debate in the neurological sciences studies. Pornography is having addictive impacts on users, and so that's really helpful to understand when you're talking about the public health impacts. And a number of these studies are finding that escalation and habituation is very common. Basically, users of pornography develop a tolerance, and they seek to view harder content, more deviant content, new genres that often include like shock, surprise, violation, or of expectations. And often this anxiety can function to increase sexual arousal. This is important because our young people are having the same reaction in their brains when they're viewing pornography. And I'm going to pause, and I want to share something with you right now that will help you understand the point I'm making. So we know that pornography is changing the brain and that users of pornography are escalating. The problem is that today, what you might find on the front page of Pornhub is generally the content that people who have been using pornography now for a few decades, it's the content that they want to consume because their brains have changed to want this harder content. The problem, friends, is that our young people are exposed to this as like their first encounters with pornography. So they're entering into like the stream of someone who's been addicted for many, many years already at the very hard, violent, extreme point. What does that mean for where they're going to go in the future? And also I hope this helps to get you like fired up to decrease our young people's access to this hardcore violent content. We have to like rise up and do something about the ubiquitousness of how easy it is to get at this content at such young ages. Okay, I'm gonna skip forward. It's very important too to understand that the pornography is also correlated to increased perpetrating sexual violence. There's 18 really strong studies in particular about pornography use and sexual violence of the users perpetrating that violence. In particular, like this one that's up on my screen is focused on likelihood to rape. And this is heavy, guys. I don't want to just focus on all the bad, but it is so bad. And the science is telling us it's very clear that while the exposure to pornography increases your likelihood to perpetrate sexual violence, it also is connected to the likelihood to become a victim, especially among our young women, or the female consumers of pornography. Think about it. If what they're watching in pornography is depicting sexual violence and then pleasure at that, we're teaching our young girls to expect to be treated this way and to accept it. And that is going to put them in a much more dangerous position as they go through life, especially considering how many young women and increasingly how many young men are victims of sexual assault, harassment, and violence. So basically their exposure to pornography at young ages is grooming them to accept that kind of behavior. So when it happens, they think that's just what's supposed to be happening to them. I talked a little bit about how the pornography use impacts the brain, and habituation and tolerance and escalation happens. Well, one of the things that they have found too significantly is that child sexual abuse material collectors, so those who are collecting child pornography, their tastes are also growing more severe over time. And sometimes they seek to act out in real life what they're viewing. This is common. I'm not saying that all users of pornography will act out in real life what they're viewing, but many do. And that might mean perpetrating this harm on a child, maybe because they are sexually aroused, they are a pedophile specifically, or maybe it's just because children are available and around and easy targets for them to act out on. And they're not necessarily pedophiles, but they want to act out what they're viewing. And the easiest target is a child in their vicinity. Just specifically, other impacts specifically on children and teens, we're seeing that it affects exposure to pornography. It affects their psychological, physical, and social development. It fosters a sexual miseducation about what healthy intimacy and sexuality is. It teaches that hardcore pornography is normal and desirable. It often desensitizes young people and increases their appetite for more deviant, bizarre, violent types of pornography. Facilitates sexual aggression and early sexual debut and risky sexual behaviors. In many case studies, it's showing that it damages the emotional bond with their caregiver. They're more at risk for physical and sexual victimization. Negative body image. They often feel pressure to perform pornographic acts. There's this increase in child-on-child sexual abuse, increase in voyeurism. You're seeing and hearing so many stories these days of kids witnessing sexual abuse and exploitation and pulling out their phones to record it. That's largely also because they've been seeing it recorded. Also, we record and photograph everything. There's a lot going on there. We're seeing that they are more likely to engage in or to demand sexting, more increase in cyber harassment and bullying. There's outing and trickery used. They have more lax attitudes about rape and sexual assault. And it's associated with delinquency and criminal behavior. So I'm just trying to help you understand some of the public health harms as we find in the research, and as probably some of you are seeing in real life with young people around you. Okay, I'm gonna go over to some heavy, hard research on youth with problematic sexual behavior and the role pornography played. So here's one of a key study that came out. Young men want to imitate ideas presented in porn, and young women feel pressure and anxious about a need to conform. Finding support evidence that young people may be internalizing the violent and aggressive images and sexual scripts in porn, which are in turn influencing their sexual behavior and creating new sexual norms that are based on power. I was reading a study that was just published. I found it this weekend, but it came out a couple months ago, about how common strangulation has become in teen relationships. And I just have to point out that it's because pornography has influenced their intimacy and it's changed their sexual scripts. Strangulation is now a very common experience that our young people are having. Here's teen dating violence and pornography. Research is showing that adolescent dating abuse is associated with more frequent pornography use, viewing pornography in the company of others, and being asked to perform a sexual act that a partner first saw in pornography. Approximately 50% of adolescent dating abuse victims reported that they had been asked to do a sexual act that their partner saw in pornography. Again, this is impacting our young people hugely. Violent pornography viewing correlated with youth acting out. They're finding then that minors who intentionally viewed violent pornography over time predicted a 6-fold increase in the odds of self-reported sexually abusive behavior for both boys and girls. This was so much harder to access this stuff before 2011. And so I imagine, the number has increased hugely. Here's this one. This is a key study. It's a meta-analysis of 59 studies looking at young male sexual offenders. And it's key to understand that adolescents who had sexually offended were significantly more likely to have had early exposure to pornography, report higher rates of exposure to pornography, and have significantly more atypical fantasies. There's so much hope when you look at the research and the real in practice side of things, when our young people no longer have access to pornography, when you can start to change those sexual scripts, when you can model and talk about healthy intimacy and sexuality, you replace what they've learned in pornography with what's healthy, mutual respect and all of those things. You see that they change so quickly. Really helpful for you all to understand as I'm saying all this heavy, hard stuff is that I want to skip through because I don't want you to read this heavy stuff. The positive thing I really want you all to understand is that when young people are caught acting out on another in harmful sexual behavior, what we found is the recidivism is so low when there has been intervention. So when we as adults talk to the young people after they've acted out about it, when we put up boundaries and tools to help reduce their exposure to this material and exposure to other young kids, like the recidivism goes down so low. A number of studies show it's like between 2 and 6% of them acting out again. When we address these issues, these kids who perpetrate the harm are not monsters. They're not destined to a life of hurting and harming many other people. They can and do learn how to treat each other with respect. So I hope that, please hear me say that. Okay, so what can we do about this? Okay, I'm gonna just riff on a bunch of ideas. Let me check the Q&A too before I move to solutions to see if there's yeah, okay. I know it feels really hopeless to talk about pornography and technology when you start learning all about the impact, what the research is showing. Somebody asked me that question, but what I want you all to understand is that's why it's helpful to talk about these things with our kids and not leave them to figure it out on their own. They're going to be exposed to this stuff. We do all we can to prevent it, to delay it, to decrease the amount that they're exposed to. But friends, no matter what we do, our kids will be exposed to this hardcore content and to predators online because it's beyond your control as a parent. I hope you guys can also understand you have to let some of the guilt go because you as a parent, you do not have the power and the control that you need to fully protect your kids. These tech companies have designed platforms that are so flawed, that don't give you the tools that you need to protect your kids, and that haven't designed with your children's safety in mind. Just like a key example, Roblox. Roblox is such a popular video game used by our young people. They initially made this game for kids under age 13. And, you know, like there's 12.8 million kids around between age 8 and 13 on this game every single day. Yet this game is so flawed. Even if you go turn on the parental controls, strangers can still send and communicate with your kids in the fantasy worlds that they're playing in. Like, why? Why is that not automatically turned off? And then this game even asks your young kids when they go set up an account, which they don't need your permission to, they just can put in their date, their birth date as young as like 6 or 7 years old, and the game lets them on. And what happens is they don't even default to the safety or strictest settings for these young kids. Like, parents, you have to let the guilt go because you're trying all you can to protect them, but also these technology companies have taken your power away. So one of the things I'm here to beg you all to do is come with me to these tech companies and policymakers at your state and federal level and demand that power back. Demand that they have to design platforms with your children's safety in mind from the beginning. Demand that common sense measures take place. You know, why is X or Twitter allowing pornography to be uploaded? They have a policy that specifically allows pornography and prostitution on their platform. Yet if you're a teenager on their platform, it's not defaulted to off. You know, come with me to demand that it be off. And I would argue that Twitter or X has just as much pornography as Pornhub. It's really a pornography website too, and it's just as deviant and extreme as the content that you'll find on Pornhub. Okay, so proposed solutions. Number one, come with me to demand that these technology companies change. And I hope you'll be encouraged to learn that the first time in 25 years, a bill is being brought forward on the Senate floor in the next couple of weeks for online child safety, to do what I was just telling you, to have common sense measures and minimum standards that these technology companies have to have, or else they can face, you know, intense consequences as a result. The Senate just introduced this bill called the Kids Online Safety Act last week with 62 co-sponsors, 62, amazing, almost equal Republicans and Democrats. And it'll be brought to a vote soon. So you can go ask your elected officials to vote yes on COSA. That will change a lot of things. So that's what I'm trying to do at the National Center on Sexual Exploitation, is change the systems and the corporations that have allowed this to change. But what else can you do? I'm going to stop sharing my screen, and I want to focus on something I think is just really, like, in all the years I've been here and doing this work, you know, we talk a lot about specific tools that you can use. But friends, really, like, the most important preventative tool that you have is the relationship that you have with your child. And I used to kind of roll my eyes like, yeah, I know, but give me the button I need to push, but tell me what I need to say exactly, or what setting I need to change to protect my kids. Yes, you can find a lot of those advice, but those platforms are so flawed. So even if you spend hours and hours turning them on, which you should do, your kids are still likely to be harmed by the content and the people that they're exposed to on these platforms. So really what I want to convey to you as like the number one solution is to nourish relationships. Okay, let me share my screen with my other one. It's so hard not seeing you all. And the time is going fast. Okay, so nourish relationship with your child. This will provide the peace and security for a pornography resistant mind to grow and develop in your child. Some ways to nourish your relationship is reflect on how healthy your relationship is. Those are sometimes hard conversations to have with yourself, with your partner. really how well is it doing, and what can you do to start improving it if it can be improved. Engaging in simple activities like family night, some fun meals together, letting them know in so many different ways that that you're there and helping them to feel loved. Pay attention to them. Oh my goodness, my daughter last night was just talking forever about a book that I have no interest in, but I was like, I'm gonna listen. I'm gonna pay attention to her. And this morning she woke up so like lovey and cozy with me. So I feel like that talk made a big difference to her. I don't do this all the time, guys, but listening, learning together. You know, my son wants to be on Roblox. I hate that game. I don't want my kids on that game. There's so many problems there. But learning together how, like, what the dangers are, how it works, and then we actually play it together. That's the only way he can be on it, is if we're playing together. So important too is your relationship with technology. So nourishing your relationship with technology and your kids. Not only does technology often introduce the harmful content to our kids, it often threatens to distract us as parents and children from taking time and effort to nourish their relationships. Like really assessing your own use of technology. Is it interrupting your relationship with them? Are you using technology as a way to numb yourself when you're feeling overwhelmed, stressed, scared, bored, you know, all these kind of negative emotions that come with just being human? Are you using technology to deal with those things, or are you going and dealing with it? Because if you're using technology to try to deal with those by like endlessly scrolling or playing games, which friends I do sometimes too, then we're teaching our kids to do the same. And if we're teaching our kids when they're in uncomfortable feelings to go to technology, they're gonna, you know, who's gonna find them? They're so vulnerable. So we have to really look at our relationship with technology and what are we modeling for them. That's such a key preventative tool for so much of what I was talking about. How healthy is your child's relationship with technology? So you're assessing your own and theirs. Protect Young Eyes is like one of my most favorite websites and tools. Everything that they put out on social media is so helpful to me. But they have this one program where they really talk about digital trust builders. So you want your kids to learn how to copy you. Like, are they endlessly scrolling? Are they on their technology in their bedrooms? Are you playing hours of games? Is your screen use of screens robbing your kids of previous face-to-face interactions with you? So like really looking at that internally, co-playing with your kids. You should do technology with your kids early and often. Oh my goodness, my dad was like so against texting, and it's like so old school now. And he wouldn't join our group text until like recently. And it's like our relationship is so much stronger because he's in our family group chat. He's seeing and hearing all the stories and pictures. Like it's going every day. It's like suddenly we're so much closer with my dad, with grandpa now because he's doing technology with us. So think about how you can engage with technology with your kids. Doing shoulder to shoulder activities with them can help bridge conversation and help create more connections. Really also helping to understand how they use technology is a window into their heart. Just off the top of my head, my son really wants a bearded dragon. Okay, so we got him one on Saturday, but for like 18 months, he's wanted a bearded dragon so bad. But he tells me, but when I like went and looked up what he was looking up online, I really saw like, he wants it so bad. He's like, how can I be a dad to a beardy? That was the sweetest thing. I was like, he's ready. So really helping it can help you know their heart is just an example I want to share with you. And it's easier for us to be interested in what they're interested in. Like, oh my gosh, so now I'm interested in bearded dragons, and I'm grateful that I learned about that from his technology use. Having digital curiosity. It's so easy to condemn them. Oh my gosh, I do it too. Like, why are you still on? Turn it off. What are you doing on that website? But having curiosity is really a better, more productive conversation to have. Why are you on? What are you feeling? What are you looking up? And trying to be positive and calm and patient while you're trying to learn about what they're doing online. You know, especially if you walk in and you understand, you see that your kid has been viewing pornography or has been having dangerous conversations with a stranger. Instead of reacting with condemnation and anger and frustration, being curious and patient and positive is really helpful. Think about, if all of our tech conversations are negative, then what are the chances that your kids are going to tell you when something bad happens? You know, are they going to come to you and say that they received a nude image through their direct message on Instagram? Not if all of your conversations are negative and they think you're going to take it away from them right away. And you want to know, you want to be the one they're coming to. You don't want them going to Google. All right, guys, I said, yeah, you don't want them going to Google. So you have to talk about the awkward things no one else wants to talk about. They probably didn't talk to you enough about them. So embrace the awkward and go for it. And, you know, help your kids to know that if anything does go wrong online, you're a safe place for them to come to and convey and share what happened. One of the biggest ways that predators are targeting our kids is, you know, they get our kids to create nude or sexually explicit images, and then they use that and they threaten, if the kids don't send more, if the kids don't do something, send money, if the kids don't meet up in real life, then they're going to send those images to you as parents. You want your kids to know that even if you find out that they engaged in that kind of behavior, you're a safe place. That will take away so many of the things that I'm fighting, so many of the horrors that I see. Coaching. This isn't a battle of parents versus the kids. It's us together with them. So if we could think about learning and setting boundaries with digital, with technology together. Like, explain why you're putting on filters, explain why you're turning on controls, explain why you have time limits, and ask them to help you make those rules. I've found, at least in my own home, when my kids make their tech rules, which tend to be stricter than what I want them to be, they follow them and it's like less of a fight too. Here's something: digital trust eraser. So secretly watching what your kids are doing when they don't know, that kind of spying often erases their trust. Fear, it's like bubble wrapping our kids from tech, saying like, you can't go on because it's so dangerous. And I know I just told you so many hard, heavy things, but like bubble wrapping them from them isn't going to prepare them for a digital world. I will share with you I think I did it. I'm way older than my youngest sister. And so she grew up as I'm doing this work and me telling my dad all the hard, scary, heavy things. And my dad was like, you're not getting social media. But what happened when she turned 18 and suddenly she had it and she didn't have my parents to like learn with? Hard, heavy things happened to her as a result. And I just want to convey that to you. I've seen that again and again and again. You want them to learn how to use this and engage in the technology space with you so you can help shape it, and don't just keep them bubble wrapped from it. Our kids know more than us. You can't control it all. So, you know, even ask them to teach you more. And if we don't let our kids venture into tech with loving guardrails, they're not going to develop that resiliency that they really need. Kind of going back to my sister's experience, it's really like looking at relationships. I don't want you guys to roll your eyes, because I'm not coming to you with the one button that you can push or the set of the best tools. There are really good tools out there, but I'm coming to you because the most important thing I've seen in preventing so much of the harm that I shared is nourishing relationships in all these different ways. I'm running out of time. I'm gonna hand it back over to you, Brittany, and we could do some Q&A. Is that good?
Hey, thank you so much, Dawn. Wow, it's a lot to take in. I'm glad that you kind of addressed the hope from one of those questions. Someone asked if they could have access to the entire presentation with those slides that you skipped over. Is that an option?
Sure. Well, okay, I kind of used two presentations here, so I'll send both of them to you, Brittany, and you guys can use whatever is helpful to you.
Okay, great. Thank you. Okay. Someone asked, said, we read good pictures, bad pictures each year. Any other good material to read to kids or preteens about the dangers of porn?
I love that book. I love it so much. I'm glad you do that. There's a number of good ones. I've seen Educate and Empower Kids has like some great books you can read together. Um, some of your other speakers in this series have great content. There's a lot of good blogs out there that give you good talking points. The blog that goes with Good Pictures, Bad Pictures, it's called Defend Young Minds. Their blog is so good, and it every week comes up with like just new things you could talk about. So it's not once a year, so it's kind of ongoing. And also not just talking about pornography, but like hypersexualized anything that kind of makes them feel icky or uncomfortable behaviors that they're experiencing. Just having those conversations really regularly instead of like it feeling like the one time you're talking about them would be helpful. One thing I found that's helpful too, Brittany, is kind of talking about current events. Um, things are happening in our communities or in the media regularly that touch on these, allows you to talk about sexting, about pornography, about exposure, about cyberbullying and pressuring and all those. So those are some ideas.
Awesome. Thank you. So you alluded to something about what's on the front page of Pornhub and how that is a representation of what people want to see. Can you just like give us maybe a quick, brief overview of what might be on there for those who are unfamiliar with that? What are some of the
Sorry,
common themes?
on like that our young people would see right away in pornography today. Yeah, so it's generally very violent is the pornography of today, and it's showing pleasure at the violence, which is really problematic to our sexual development. But so, incest and racism are also extremely common themes, like on the front page of. There was a study that came out in 2022, or it might have been 2021, that just analyzed the content on the home pages of three of the biggest pornography websites, like what you'll see immediately. And it was something like 70% was incest themed. And so that's what our young people are seeing. And then that's what they're learning and often acting out on one another.
Okay, someone asked, she says, being in this space, she runs a mental health group focused on trauma healing. It is easy for all of this to weigh you down. How do you take care of your own mental health and not parent from fear?
It's hard. I think I do parent from fear sometimes, because this really has a huge impact on me. I'd like to think it's not fear, but it's more like informed. I'm informed. And so we have, stricter rules than almost everyone else that we know. But how do I keep it from not weighing me down? Some days, just like you, Jessica, I feel weighed down and feels heavy and hard and a little bit hopeless. But then I see so much progress. I realize that I'm not alone, that there's so many of us joining hands and speaking up. I find a lot of like hope in that we're actually seeing change. Like I get to see victories regularly, and I invite you guys to join and follow us on social or sign up for our emails, because we try to really share the victories that are happening. Like just an example, um, a young child was exposed to pornography on Google Images. She was in third grade and she was doing a school report, and she wanted to find an image for the front page of her report. So she went to Google Images and she typed in happy black teen. And she just wanted someone who looked like her to put on her report. And she saw like some of the most violent, horrific content ever. And she and her mom reached out to our organization to make sure we knew what was on Google Images. We went to Google as a result, and it was a many years long campaign to try to get Google to change the algorithms and the content that's being showed in Google Images. But you guys, and we have like 20 more of those kinds of stories that happened since then, and that we took to Google too. But earlier this year, okay, 2023, because it's now February, 2023, Google changed their process and policy, and they now blur all sexually explicit and violent content in Google Images, not just for kids, but for adults too. Like, huge win in that space. And it's because people like you are coming and speaking up and sharing your experiences, and we're saying enough is enough. That, to me, that brings so much hope. And I see, maybe it feels like small changes every day, but I hold on to that. Also, I see young people demanding better. Like, so many young people are saying, like, I don't want this. I don't, it's hurting me. Help me. And that gives me a lot of hope too.
Awesome. We've had a few people ask about what they can do, like if they don't know much about how to advocate for better policies, like where do they start? What do they say to senators or representatives?
Thank you. Brittany, are you going to send an email after this to everyone who registered? If you don't mind, I'll send you guys a link so you can write your senators, and we have a message you could send. You can edit it if you'd like, to your members about COSA. But in short, just say, hey, our kids are exposed to such horrible things online. It's past time for these tech companies to be held accountable for caring about their safety. Please help us. Please help us move these tech companies to care about our kids' safety. And if you have a specific story or story in your community that you could share, those really touch hearts. Like, you guys, when parents and young people stand up, it doesn't matter that the tech companies are spending millions of dollars to try to stop us, because, like, we win when you speak up.
Absolutely. And maybe this is a good time for you to mention the C Summit that's happening this year. Do you want to say something about
I knew
that?
I would forget, Brittany. Yes, friends. Brittany, is this how we met? I think so. Did you come?
I think that's where we first met in person. Yes.
Yeah.
Yes.
We host a global summit, the Coalition to End Sexual Exploitation Global Summit. And it'll be this year, August 5th to 8th in Washington, D.C. We're really focused on technology this year, and the role technology is playing in both protecting our kids and helping them grow up lives free from sexual abuse and exploitation, but also how it's causing harm and things that we need to do as a result. Leaders of the movement come, lots of parents and concerned citizens, but it's really for, like, those who want to get really involved in this movement to come. And there's an opportunity also to go advocate with us on Capitol Hill. So it's August 5th to 8th in Washington, D.C., and you can learn more at endexploitationsummit.com.
It's one of the coolest summits that I go to every year. Well, we haven't had it in person for a couple of years, but it is so amazing. And I learned so much, and it just feels so empowered after that. Okay. Well, we have, let's see, how about, this attendee said, I don't even know where to start to bring up pornography with my 10-year-old boy. Where's a good starting place for that?
It's hard to have these conversations, guys, and it doesn't matter how old they are. You start now, is like the answer I always tell people. So for your 10-year-old, I would start with something like, we don't take pictures of our private parts. Do you know why? Or what do you think? Have you ever seen pictures of anyone's private parts? How did it make you feel? When did you see it? Where were you? You could say something like, oh, I saw a picture of someone's private parts, and I just wanted to talk to you about it because I realized I haven't talked to you about it yet, and it's really important. Um, Friends, that's something too that's so helpful, is to admit your own, like, you struggle, you see it too. It just helps to, like, totally lower their defenses. Like, you're not immune from it either, and so conveying that kind of vulnerability to them really helps open the doors and open their hearts to listen. Do you have other ideas, Brittany? I bet you have some good.
I love that. And it reminds me of something Deanna shared last week about just kind of being on the same team with our kids. Like, it's not you against them, it's us in this together against the things that might harm our children. I wanted to ask about, some people feel like technology companies are making these changes, or doing things to try to protect kids online, but yet I feel like there's opposite sides. Some people think the tech companies are doing a great job, and then yet we're hearing all these harms. So what would you say to what efforts the tech companies are making?
They're so lame. They are so good right now at, like, I'm in Washington, D.C., and they have like flooded the media markets here with ads about how much they are partnering with parents to help protect kids. I mean, I just say, like, they have billions of dollars. They made these most incredible tools that are just amazing. They can solve the problem of online child exploitation. They can solve that problem if they made it a priority, and they simply are not doing that. I could give you specific examples of every platform. They're not doing enough. And just a couple weeks ago, many of you probably heard that the Senate Judiciary Committee had like 5 of the biggest tech CEOs before them. I was in that room. I was with a ton of parents who came with us, whose children mostly died as a result of the exploitation and harm that they experienced online. It was such a life-changing moment for me. But I sat there as each of the 5 CEOs said they spent so many millions of dollars on child protection, but anytime that the senator said, how much and what impact is that having? And how much is that as a part of like all the money that you are making? And they wouldn't answer that, because spending $1 million on child protection sounds good, but not when you've got billions of dollars going. So I would just say they're not one single tech company has prioritized child safety and has designed really with their safety in mind. And they don't have to, because right now there's no laws that are making them.
Yeah, absolutely. Oh, such an uphill battle, which is why we all need to be advocating together. We need to join forces and advocate for this together. Well, that is all the time we have time for today. I wish that we had time for more questions, and we will send out a link to a feedback form where you can put a question in there if you want Dawn to answer anything else that we didn't get answered today. So I invite you to fill that out. Thank you so much, Dawn, for what you shared, for helping us open our eyes to what the problem actually is, and then also giving us hope for what we can do about it. So next week, we'll have Clay Olson on talking about mental health and to address the connections of mental health and technology and what we can do about that. So we hope that you'll all join us again next week and invite friends to come. Go to mediasafety.org and encourage them to sign up there. And of course, we will contact you as soon as the recordings are available, including this one today. So thank you again, Dawn. You're amazing. Thank you for all you do.